Welcome back to Northern Exotics, guys. In this video we're going to teach you everything you need to know and a couple of different ways of how you can turn your superworms into beetles. This is absolutely idealistic if you're planning on breeding your superworms or if you just want a superworm beetle as pets. We're going to teach you everything you need to know right now. There's a couple of things you're going to need. You're going to need little tubs because your superworms, they're going to need to be separated into their own individual cups. These little things. These are what I use. The links are in the description into my Amazon store if you want to go and pick some up. They're dead cheap. But you need some little tubs, ideally dark ones. You can use the light ones and yeah, whatever. But you need to separate your superworms. So you get yourself one of your superworms. Just dropped it on the floor. One of your highly gut-loaded superworms. You want to gut-load your superworms for a few weeks. I'll continue more on that in the throughout the video. But separate your superworms into these little tubs. Get yourself a dark box. I've got a shoe box, just simply because absolutely zero light actually passes through this box into the actual box itself. Grab them, chuck them in, close the lid, stick that somewhere dark and warm, and eventually over a few weeks, normally 2 to 3 weeks or so, they'll actually pupate. I'll run through the science of it all now. Now, your superworms will actually only pupate when they're at adult size. You can see the size difference between that one and that one. That's not an adult, so that gets left in the gut load sort of area. You need to separate them because they will only pupate when they feel safe and secure. In the wild, they will burrow down under the surface, go between tree roots and stuff like that, and that's where they'll burrow. They won't see anybody else. There's no dangers because they can't defend themselves when they're in that pupa stage in the wild, so they won't do it. They're not like mealworms where you can just leave them. You need to separate these. Now, put them into these little tubs. They can still see each other. If you're stacking these little tubs next to each other, they can still see themselves next to each other, so they won't pupate that way. So it needs to be an extremely dark place. I used to use a little blue box tub thing and put them in there. It wasn't until after sort of a month and they weren't pupating and they were all dying off, I started to look into it. Well, why are they doing that? And that's because there was a little bit of light entering the actual tub itself. That's why I've changed it over to going into this shoebox, because inside this shoebox you want to get all these little holes all boxed off and taped off and stuff, so literally zero light goes into this. Even if it's dark, have you ever been out into the dark forest at night and when you first get out the car it's a bit, oh god, I can't see anything, but after 10 minutes you can see for miles? That's exactly the same with these guys. So you really do need to make sure it is pitch black, darker than you've ever seen it, darker than my top right now. Make sure it's dark and you will get the best production, because quite often you'll put your worms into your little tubs and they'll go black and they'll die off or they'll dehydrate and stuff like that. One of the reasons is exactly that. They just won't pupate because they can see the other superworms around and they feel threatened. It's a threat. They can't pupate when it's like that, so they won't pupate. Another reason why they go all black and die and stuff is dehydration, which moves us on to the gut load part of this video. You need to get your superworms from your shop or your online supplier or wherever you get them from, and basically stick them in a big tub like this. I just leave them in here and I just constantly keep feeding them for a couple of weeks. It does take a couple of weeks for the moisture from the food that you feed them to actually get into all of their little ligaments and stuff. When you first get them, they'll be that dark sort of colour. I know that was bad footage and you can't see them, but after a few weeks they'll go this sort of really light sort of tan colour. You know when they're fully gut loaded because their colour changes, they become a lot more active and they're just absolutely perfect. That's the best way to do it. Get them really highly gut loaded, drop them into the little containers, shut the little containers, make sure you've got a tiny little air hole in the top, because they still breathe in this stage, they still breathe in the pupa stage, and they still breathe in the beetle stage. They won't be in these containers when they're beetles, but it's always a good theory to do. You get your box, open it up, just chuck them in. You can stack them in there nice and neatly so you can get loads in there, absolutely perfectly fine. And then I get that tub then, it's possibly still not going to be dark enough for me, chuck them straight into the airing cupboard. It's warm, it's dry, they'll pupate absolutely perfect in the quickest time you've ever pupated if you do it that way. It's absolutely amazing. That's how you pupate them. When they turn into pupa, they're just going to look like a little alien. Get them out of the tubs because they're going to need a bit more air. Chuck your pupa into a separate tub with a bit of substrate and stuff like that just to help them when they are coming out of the pupa stage. They've got something to grab hold of to push them out. Reuse that tub, throw another worm in it, shut it up, start the cycle again. That's the most common way to do it and the best way of doing it for the quickest turnaround from superworm to actual beetle. Let's move on to the next one. Now the next one's going to be a bit quicker and a bit more self-explanatory because I've already explained the gut load part. You get your little tub, fill it with dirt. You can use a bigger tub than this if you want. You can use a small, whatever. Fill it full of dirt and then put your superworm in. It'll burrow down, then close the lid on it. Make sure you've got your air hole in it. You might want to put 1 or 2 more in there just to be safe. Make sure they're super small so that they can't get their little pincers on it and stuff. They will burrow into that dirt and then that dirt will act as the dark area for them. If you turn it upside down, you might see them there every now and then. You do not want to put any food in these tubs because that will make it so they won't pupate again. They'll have a bit of food, they've got something to occupy themselves. Don't put any food in there, no moisture, no nothing. Make sure they're highly gut loaded before they go into it. I keep saying that. Why do I keep saying that? Anyway, put some dirt in there, they'll burrow into the dirt, they will pupate in the dirt. You'll see the superworm kicking around all the time, but then all of a sudden you won't see it. That's when it's turned into a pupa, you can open it, you can chuck it into the tub, done. Use that for another cycle. And that normally takes between 2 to 3 weeks again. Again, when it's full of dirt, whack it in your box, stick your box in the airing cupboard, get it as dark as you possibly can. That's the second way of doing it. The third way is the cheap way. This is the cheap way if you don't want to buy any little tubs or if you, I mean you can use any little tubs. You don't have to go onto my Amazon store, which is linked in the description, and buy these. Subscribe if you haven't already. You can use any little tubs that you've got lying around. If you've had a takeaway over the weekend and you've got a couple of these little sauce tubs or anything like that, use them. That's how I started. I picked these up. I think they're only a couple of quid for 50 of them. They come in a big packet like this. I think that's 25. Oh, no, there you go, 50 in that little tub there. I got loads of them. Absolutely loads of them. Right, number 3. I went off topic. You can get your superworms and chuck them in one of the enclosures. If you've got a deep substrate in your enclosure, just chuck them in. They will, if it's a bioactive enclosure, even better. Eventually, you'll see a beetle pop up. Just grab the beetle. Right, I'm having you. Chuck him into your breeding facility, into your superworm farm. If you want to learn how to set up your own farm, just click on the card just up there. That's a video that I did. And yeah, that is the third way of doing it. Now, let's talk through some science. Well, not so much science, but a little bit of common sense dropped towards you guys. To get these to pupate like they would in the wild, you've got to look at their wild habitat. Now, the temperatures I've found for the substrate underneath the ground, which is where the worms are going to live in the wild, sort of lower to upper 70s Fahrenheit absolutely works perfect for me. I found that the quickest temperatures to actually pupate your superworms. There's other things you can look at with the darkness. They're underground. You've got to get it as dark as possible. I've already stressed that enough. You have to make sure they are extremely gut loaded. How do I gut load my superworms? Basically, they're dustbin. They will eat absolutely anything. I mean, just look inside my little tub here. I've got this little shot glass. It is literally just a shot glass. I use that to mix up some Pangea for my morning geckos. And I always mix up a little bit more. Anything left, I just grab that in the tub and just drop it, and they'll go in and eat that absolutely perfectly fine. I have some banana peel, I have some green veggies, anything that's got a bit of moisture built in with it, I use perfectly fine. So your banana peels, your oranges, your apples, your lettuce and cucumbery sort of stuff, I don't know, absolutely anything that's got a bit of moisture in, because that's the whole idea. You want to pack as much nutrition and as much moisture into these before they go into the pupa stage. Now, a problem I've had, or not a problem I've had, but a problem one of my subscribers has had. He commented in one of my superworm videos saying, why are my superworms eating each other when I'm trying to gut load them? If you've got a big tub, not like this, a big tub, and you've got not so many, but a fair few superworms in there, and you're only putting a banana peel down here, chances are there's a bit of territory sort of issue. Some superworms are bullying the others away from the food because they want them. So try sticking 2 pieces of food in there. That's a little top tip that a lot of people have had. Same again when you've got your baby superworms as well. Instead of just having one orange peel stuck in the middle, grate it, stick loads throughout and stuff like that. And that's just always worked absolutely perfect for me. Because I had a similar problem. Not that exact problem, but I had a similar problem. And you will end up with absolutely amazing, healthy, look how active they are. You don't see that a lot. Never ever pupate or put into pupation freshly brought live food, because chances are your live food is going to be extremely dehydrated and malnourished. Malnourished. I can say that word now. Yeah, chances are it's going to be extremely dehydrated and malnourished when you first get them from the shop, which is always advisable to gut load them before you feed them to your animal. Everyone says gut load them for 24 hours. Nah, try gut loading them for a few weeks, because trust me, you will notice a huge benefit in your animal. Your superworms would have been gut loaded and fed up really well by the breeder. He would have shipped them off to the wholesaler, Ferguson, or whoever is the wholesaler. The wholesaler then has them on the shelf waiting for the shops to purchase them. The shop will purchase them, they will go on the shop shelves. They will stay on the shop shelves for as long as it takes for you to purchase your superworms. So that could take a week, it could take 2 weeks, and that'll be that long that these haven't had moisture. It's extremely important for you to highly gut load your superworms before putting them into pupation and before feeding them off to your reptile or hedgehog or whatever it is you're feeding to.